Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be discussing some important settings that you can use to optimize FL Studio on your budget PC. There's a balance between performance and audio quality. We're going to be talking about that balance and how you can find the right spot for yourself on your low budget PC. We're going to be covering topics like buffer length for recording, MIDI input, and production, being beat making, mixing, and mastering, resampling quality, smart disable, time settings, the PPQ. So before we continue, please, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button, like this video, and share with your friends. Let's go. So the buffer length controls the latency settings on your DAW. When recording from a microphone or recording a MIDI input, you need your latency to be as low as possible on your PC. This is because when you have a high latency, there's a delay between when the audio source is captured by the device and is processed by your computer into your DAW. For recording, setting the latency as low as possible helps you get audio files that are on beat and are in sync with your project. Doing this is easy. You go to options, you go to audio settings, but first you have to ensure that you have the right device driver selected on the input option here. For me, I'm using the Focusrite Scarlett 2i2 second gen interface. That's why I have the Focusrite USB ISO selected. It's not connected to a Thunderbolt port. If it was connected to a Thunderbolt port, I would use the Focusrite Thunderbolt ISO because that's way faster than the Focusrite USB ISO. But for you, it depends on the audio interface that is connected to your computer. So you just go straight to the buffer length. Here it's the option below the device driver settings. You click on it twice and you have the buffer size option. That's what we're focusing on, the buffer size option. So for recording, like I said earlier, you need the buffer size here to be set as low as possible. Now I need you to focus on the CPU meter over here to the right. Right now, it's on, my buffer size is on 1024. And you have my CPU meter here just around 2. It's going from 2 to 1, 1 to 2, just like that. Pay attention. When I increase my buffer size, when I reduce my buffer size to, let's say, 128, if you look right here at the CPU meter, you notice a jump from 2. It's now hitting almost 10. That's because the latency, first of all, the latency has reduced. But that has also added more load on my CPU. So that's the disadvantage. It adds more load on your CPU. And if you look at the latency information here, you can see that we're getting 15.1 milliseconds of latency. This is good for recording. If we drop it lower than this, we're going to get a lower latency. Let's try it. Now pay attention, we're getting 13.7 milliseconds of latency. Very good for recording. But if you're making a beat, when you're making a beat, when you're mixing and mastering a track, this won't work. This won't work because you are going to be loading up some plugins. Let's say if you're using wave plugins are usually CPU intensive. Plugins like that, it is going to be difficult, almost impossible for you to mix a full track with your buffer size at 96. What I do is I ensure that before I start the mixing process, I take my buffer size and I put it at the highest possible option here. And for me, that's 1024. Now, if you look at the latency information here, you can see that the latency has increased to 97.7 ms. This is bad for recording, but good for beat making, mixing, and mastering. A lot of my friends who use FL Studio for beat making, for recording, mixing, and mastering, they complain to me about or hearing a different sound in FL Studio compared to what you hear when you export your files. I'm talking about the quality of the audio files in FL Studio and out of FL Studio. So this is because of the resampling quality in your audio settings. If you experience difficulty with the accuracy of the sound reproduction in FL Studio compared to what you hear when you export your files, it's simple. It's just the resampling quality of your mixer. I always set mine to 512.sync. This is the highest resampling quality in FL Studio, but this adds a whole lot of load on your CPU, okay? That's the disadvantage. The advantage is you hear the sound accurately. The disadvantage is it adds a lot of load on your CPU. By default, I think FL Studio by default is set to, it's either 32.sync or 64.sync by default. But I think it's what the sacrifice to put it at 512.sync, because the accuracy, especially when you're mixing and mastering, that accuracy is really important. And also when you're exporting a track, if you have the issue with having a track sound different from what you hear in FL Studio, it's the same thing, the resampling quality. Let's say I want to bounce this file now, wave, save it to untitled, click save. Down here at the quality section, you have the resampling. I have mine set to 512.sync, which is the highest. Yeah, you just have to put it here. This is where you get the best possible quality, the most accurate quality of your exported audio file. Sorry. I'm gonna go through some other important export settings that you need to pay attention to. First, let's look at the wave beat depth here. If you're bouncing a file that you want to master, or maybe you want to bounce some stems that you want to mix, it's recommended that you use the highest bit depth available, which is 32-bit float. Some people use 24 bits. You can use this if you're going to be sending the files to someone, maybe an engineer. Yeah, but if you're gonna work with the files natively in your computer, just use 32 bits. This is what I do. It preserves majority of the information on your audio track. Yeah. If you're exporting MP3 files, it's the same thing, but this time it's called the bitrate. You want the bitrate to be as high as possible. I think 320 kbps, that's the max. Yeah. The same thing goes with the OGG. The bitrate, max it out. For the FLAC, it uses beat depth. The max for the beat depth is 24 bits. You can use that, but this also depends on, let's say you're bouncing a file out because you want to distribute it to music streaming platforms. Some distribution companies would request for 24-bit FLAC files. Some would just go with 16 bits. So it depends on the requirements. Under the quality settings, you want to have the high quality for all plugins enabled. And you want to have disable maximum polyphony enabled. For mastering, you might want to turn on dithering, but this depends on how loud your track is, because sometimes when you master a track and it's excessively loud, that introduces distortion. Okay, dithering helps to cover that distortion with something known as white noise. It uses white noise to cover the distortion in a way that it sounds pleasant. In the last video, we talked about tempo, analyzing tempo, and if you turn on the save tempo information here, when you analyze the track or the audio file in FL Studio, you're going to notice that the tempo will be embedded. I always like to turn on this save tempo information here. because it helps me and it also helps the producers I collaborate with or the artists that I'm working for or working with to easily obtain the tempo. Yeah. You would want to enable master effects if you have effects turned on your master. Let's say maybe you're mastering a track. You want to enable insert effects if you have some effects turned on the different insert slots on your mixer. You want to enable trim PDC silence. Yeah. If you want the loop markers to be printed on your audio tracks, you can save the loop markers also. The same goes for the playlist markers. But I don't have any playlist marker here in my playlist, so there's no need for this, but this is just my export settings. Another setting that can help you get the best optimization in FL Studio on your low budget PC is the Smart Disable settings. This setting has been available on FL Studio since FL12, I think, FL12. Yeah. It's pretty easy. From the macros here, you go to Tools, Macros. You scroll down till you find the Smart Disable for all plugins. You turn this on. What this does is, when you're playing through your track or when you're playing through a project using the playlist, a plugin that isn't used maybe in the intro section is turned off. It's only turned on when it's being used on the playlist. This saves your CPU. So instead of having the plugins turned on always, it automatically turns the plugin off when they're not in use and gives you some spare CPU to use for other tasks. It's very good. You can also turn it on here in options, audio settings. You have the Smart Disable here under the CPU. Under the CPU box here, you have the Smart Disable. And to pay attention to this, you also need to have this two settings here turned on, these two options here turned on: multi-threaded generator processing and multi-threaded mixer processing. This just allows your CPU to use the other threads it has while working with FL Studio. You don't want to have a single thread. Multi-thread helps to reduce the load on each individual thread. So if you're someone that works with wave files a lot, someone that works with audio files instead of patterns a lot, maybe you're mixing a track, especially when you're mixing a track, you work with a lot of audio files like stems. This setting is going to help you get more out of your CPU on a low budget PC. It's the time settings, the PPQ. To find this, you go to options and you go to project general settings. Under the time settings option here, you can find the time-based PPQ. By default, it's set to 96. But reducing it to 24 is going to give you some more CPU to use for your project. Drop it to 24. The one in here says reducing PPQ will move notes, automation, and samples that are not aligned to the new grid. Are you sure you want to proceed? Ensure that after you change the settings, you listen to the track and you ensure that everything is on grid, so you don't end up exporting a file and you hear something sounding so messed up. So these are wonderful settings that you can do on your low budget PC in FL Studio to help you get the best possible performance and also maximize the audio quality you get out of FL Studio. On my PC, I just have 8 gigs of RAM, but still I've been able to mix and master some very dope songs. So you can also do this. Thank you very much. That'll be all for this video. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe, hit the like button, and share this video with your friends that use FL Studio, but mostly the friends that use FL Studio on a low budget PC. Catch you next time. Peace.